Hello, welcome to the MuseScore Café for today, Wednesday, April 24th, 2019. And today, the topic that I've chosen to talk about is Roman numeral analysis. And let me step back for a second. My name is Marc Sabatella. I'm the Director of Education for MuseScore. Today's topic is probably going to be of interest to people who are not MuseScore users as well, because today's topic is probably going to be of interest to people. One of the things that I wanted to show is a font that I'm in the process of developing that you can actually see demonstrated right here. This is what the font currently looks like for doing Roman numeral analysis. I'm going to talk a little bit about Roman numeral analysis in general, what it is, and talk about how to use this font. And I'll post a link to where you can get it from. It's still under development. It's not by any means final, and I will be very much interested in feedback. So good morning and good evening and good afternoon to anyone. Let's see, where is it afternoon? It's afternoon for people on the east coast of the U.S., I guess. So Roman numeral analysis. Roman numerals have been a way of kind of analyzing music that has been in use for a couple hundred years. To be honest, I'm not really sure what kind of language they used before that, because really we're talking about a language that didn't develop until like around 1800 or so, supposedly. So like this is not what Bach came up with. Obviously there was figured bass, there was some other things, but not for analysis. So I don't know what language they would have used to describe their own chords. But in any case, this idea that we have in music is that in whatever key you're in, if you build chords, and I'm gonna do that real quick. I actually have a handout for this already put together, but now you get to see me really quickly put a new one together. And I'm just entering my chords. There we go. And these are the chords. And if I put just regular chord symbol names on it, like a pop or jazz musician might use, it might look something like this. So actually, here, yeah, that's actually what I meant to do. These chord names here describe whether it's a major chord or minor chord, and we use Roman numerals also to describe their position in the key. Like this is a C chord no matter what key you're in. If you're in the key of C, that's the 1 chord because it's built on the first scale degree. And so we often use Roman numerals to indicate that sort of thing. So for instance, I'm going to use lyrics in MuseScore as a way of entering my Roman numerals. So I'll type Control L, and then I'll type a capital 1 because C is a major chord, a lowercase 2 because that's a minor chord, lowercase 3, capital 4, capital 5, lowercase 6, I forgot to make that one minor, and then lowercase 7, and then the little diminished sign. Maybe it's not so little in this font. A minor, there we go. So this is a basic thing about Roman numerals. And if I then transpose this passage and say, transpose in the key of F, say, you'll see the chords have transposed G, so F, this is an F chord, that's a G minor chord, but the Roman numeral analysis stays the same. That's not anything new. That's just how, Roman numerals don't transpose. I entered them as lyrics. Lyrics won't transpose. But yeah, so this is now the 1 chord in the key of F. The C chord that was the 1 chord in the key of C is now the 5 chord in the key of F. So that's kind of a basic thing about Roman numerals. We use capitals for major chords, lowercase for minor chords. At least that's the most common thing today. Some people do that. Some books use this, a capital 2 little m for minor. But I do this, and I think most people do this now. So there's other things in Roman numerals that are we use. One of them is to indicate inversions. So I'm going to go here and put in my F chord again, F, A, C. Oops, sorry. Okay, F, A, C. And then that's root position. The next inversion up would be A, C, and F, and then C, F, and A. And then we also have seventh chords. Let me put in a seventh chord. C, E, G, B flat, and then E, G, E, G, B flat, C, G, B flat, C, E, and B flat, C, E, G. So these inversions of the chord get their own symbols that involve, so that's the one chord. This, we put a sixth after it, indicate that it's a first inversion. That's because this interval from the bottom note to the top note is a sixth. This also has a sixth interval from the bottom note to the top note, so we can't just call it 6, so instead we call it 6/4. So now we're labeling the interval to the top note as well as the next note down. If I come over here, this is called a C7 chord. The inversions here, again, we keep getting sixths. Well, that's because, you know, chords are built out of thirds, and when you flip them over, you're going to get a sixth. So, you know, this note from here to here, from C to E, was a third, but if I flip the C to the top, it's a sixth now. So all these things are going to start with 6. So we have to come up with other things to say other than just 6. So for this one, we'll say 6/5, because the first one is a sixth, the next one's a fifth. For this inversion, it's a sixth and then a fourth. But we already have a 6/4, so we can't use that. So some people would use 6/4/3. Other people would say, you know what, that's one too many. Let's just leave out the 6 and just call it 4/3. And then for this guy, we have again a sixth, and we have again a fourth, but then the bottom note, the bottom interval, is a second. So the interval for that, some people would call it 4/2, just sort of be consistent with the 2 lettering here, two numbers. Some people would just call it 2. I'll call it 4/2 for now. So that's a sort of a basic introduction to how Roman numerals work. And I entered them all using lyrics in MuseScore, and this is just using the default font. Well, I want to show you now this new font that I'm developing. So what I'm going to do is I'm first going to click one of these lyrics, and I'm going to increase the size a little bit so that we can see things a little better. I'm going to go up to 16 point. So I change it to 16 and then hit set as style, and now they're all that way. All right, so I have entered my chords using just typing the numbers as I normally would, but now I'm going to change to my font, so my grandmother is, so Roman numeral analysis, Rome is in Italy, and C7, you have to name 5/7. Well, I didn't actually spell this with a seventh, so I'm just going to call it 5 if I'm just spelling it as a triad, if this is what you're talking. Oh, this guy. Oh, sorry. Yeah, totally. These are 5s. Sorry, I get it. These are 5s. Yeah, totally wasn't thinking. Good call. Okay, so yeah, Rome is in Italy, and it's a sort of a tradition to use puns in naming of fonts. There was a earlier Roman numeral analysis font called Sicilian Numerals, reference to Sicily. My family hails from Benevento, Italy. At least that's where my grandmother was born. But there's already a font called Benevento, so I looked up, and Benevento is in a region called Campania. So that is what I am calling my font, Campania, at least for now. So if I go to my font selector and pick the Campania font that I have installed right here. So this is the chord that was selected. Notice it just changed. Let me undo that change so you can see. Sorry, undo. So it looked like this, but as soon as I switch to my font, that 4 and the 2 automatically stack. When I hit the set as style button, you see that everything does that. And this diminished chord here, let me undo that. Watch remember the diminished chord, I had just entered the letter O, but when I set as style and use Campania for all my Roman numerals, I get the little degree sign. Now, some of you may also know that if I extend that, and make a 7th chord out of it, this chord is actually a half diminished 7th chord. So for that, I'm going to use the same abbreviation, whatever, that we would use in chord symbols in MuseScore, which is 0 is going to be the symbol. So the symbol for half diminished is circle with a slash. So, well, you're going to see it in a second, because I'm going to type a 0 and you're going to see it. Boom, there it is. The reason I use 0 as the shortcut for that is those of you who are as old as me may remember in the early days of computer fonts, all the zeros had slashes through them, so you could tell the difference between a 0 and an O. That was the thing. 0 is the shortcut that I've been using for half diminished, both to enter half diminished chords as a chord symbol, but also in my Roman numeral thing. And I could change that. You know, if I get a lot of feedback from people that they would rather type something else to get the half diminished symbol, I will, I can take that into consideration. So this is E half diminished 7, and as a chord symbol, that also turns into, and actually the 7's kind of optional. Half diminished already implies a 7th. So that's the basics of how this font works. It's designed to work, I would say, just like the way chord symbol entry works in MuseScore or in Finale or Sibelius, because all those programs have a mode where you can enter chord symbols. You type, for instance, here, B. I didn't have to type that flat sign. I typed, well, I didn't type anything because that was transposed, now I remember. But I type a capital B and then a lowercase b, and when I finish the entry, the lowercase b automatically gets turned into a flat sign. Well, the same is going to be true with my Roman numerals. If I enter a chord symbol like one of my favorite chords, the flat 7 dominant 7th chord, G, and then a G, and then a B flat, and then a D flat. This chord is the flat 7 chord. It's built on, like, the 7th scale degree is E. This is built on the flatted 7th scale degree. So if I enter my lyric here, flat, I type a B for flat sign, and it just looks like a B. But as soon as it realized, because I might be typing a word starting with B, because this font you can use for actual text also, except that it's going to do some of these substitutions on you. But at least the B is still a B available if you need it to be a B for whatever reason. But as soon as I type the V to start my Roman numeral, it says, you're doing a Roman numeral. I'm going to turn that B into a flat sign. So that's using a feature called Contextual Substitution within the font. So I can enter my chord like that. That's the gist of these things. So I am entering these as lyrics. So one thing to know in MuseScore is I'm entering them as lyrics. Why? Because chord symbols, normally I put above the staff and then Roman numerals below. Chord symbols, that's the normal way chord symbols work. That's the normal way that people use Roman numerals. But there's no requirement that you use things that way. If you prefer your lyrics to be, or whatever, to be above the staff, you can just press X and it flips above. And if you want it that way by default, I can say above over here and then hit the Set as Style button. And now all my Roman numerals, because I entered them all as lyrics, will be above. But I don't have to do it as lyrics. I could, let me just enter some notes. I can enter these as text also. So I could say Control T for text, which will display above the staff by default. And I can enter some, sharp to diminished, and it will be above the staff. Because I haven't made staff text use my Cambria font, or see, that's the thing, is Cambria is a font, and now I keep getting that confused with my own font, Campania. That's my only, so I want Campania. So there we go. There's my Campania font for staff text. One thing that's new in MuseScore for MuseScore 3, actually, I think it was added at 301 or 302. I added it. I can't remember. I think 302 I added this. While you're typing text, you can type Alt and then the right arrow. For chord symbols, you can just type space and it will move on to the next note. But of course, for regular text, you might need space. So we don't take over the space bar. But if you type Alt and then the right arrow, Let me get out of this. I think maybe I was clicking somewhere and it messed it up. Okay, Alt and then right. Now I can type another chord symbol. Oops. And so on. And then Alt right, and it will take me to the next note one at a time. So you can have them above, you can have them below, you can have them as big as you want, as small as you want. This is just ordinary text. There's no changes to MuseScore whatsoever here. This is just a font. And in fact, I'm going to show you that by using it in LibreOffice as well. One of the other things that we use in notation is this /5 of 2, meaning this would be if the chord, that's another term for the 6th chord. So in the key of F, if I enter a chord symbol of D7, and then the next chord was G minor, D7 is not a chord that's diatonic in the key of F. I would expect a D minor chord. So instead of, some people would just write a capital 6 like I did, but the sort of a classical analysis way of doing that is to call this 5/7 of 2. Staff text. Oh, did I not set my style? I think I didn't hit the set as style. There we go. So now all my staff texts are that way. And furthermore, I can also like look and say, well, let's get this guy up a little higher and make that also be the style default. So all my staff texts are at the same level. So these are all MuseScore formatting features to, control the height of things above or below the staff. Can you have, okay, so is the font included? So there are, as yet, no changes in MuseScore whatsoever. I mean, I have not submitted any change requests to MuseScore, and maybe we will include it, maybe we won't, I don't know. I'm going to make this font available for download once I'm done tweaking it. I'm never going to be done tweaking it, I'm sure. I will be accepting feedback if people tell me things, oh, can it do this, can it do that, or I wish it did this. So I'm going to post a link to where you can get a version of it very shortly, within the next few minutes. And then you can try it out. But let me just go, do I have LibreOffice loaded right now? Do you see a LibreOffice window? Looks like I don't. So let me, so this font, for whatever reason, I think WordPad, I tested it in WordPad and it doesn't work, and neither do some other fonts that use similar techniques. WordPad, I guess, just doesn't support what it would need to. So I can come here and change my font to Campagna, and we make it bigger as well. And the same thing will work here. I can type 6/5. And all things like that work. Some of the other things you can do with this font, you can have 5/4/3. So this is a suspension. And if you prefer notating things, there's another thing that we sometimes see where we write, like one way of notating a particular type of cadence is 1/6/4 followed by 5. But another way that people notate that same exact thing is 5/6/4-5/3. And notice let me do that in slow motion. I typed 5, 6, and as soon as I put the 4 in, it puts it underneath. I type a dash, and that's fine. It just puts a single dash there. I type my 5, and it's just that single dash still. As soon as I type in the 3 goes underneath, and it adds the other dash there, because that's like a common thing. It won't do that for all combinations. That's really the only combination I knew of was common enough that I needed to like specifically embed, make that part of the font. So that is how that works. For people who are interested in anything, like if anyone is interested in helping with the font design, this is the font here. Oh, so let me tell you a little about the history of this font. There was an older font called Sicilian Numerals that I mentioned. Sicilian Numerals down here. Sicilian Numerals had all these characters, and it worked totally differently. You didn't just type 6/4, you typed Shift 6 to make the 6 superscript, and then 4. So you can see here that 4 is listed as $. That's because $sign is Shift 4. So if you typed Shift 4, you'd get this superscripted 4, and if you typed regular 4, you'd get that 4. Well, that was a clever way of doing things, but it didn't work so well if you wanted to stack 3 things on top, and there were some other reasons why I elected not to go with that approach. One of the main reasons I elected not to go with that approach is because of a really amazing font that a man named Florian, oh God, can I pronounce this? Kretlow, I think. I should know that because he has done really amazing work. So let me go over to my font thing, Florian Kretlow. So he has created this font called Figurato for figured bass. Figured bass is a lot more complicated than let's see if any of these are. That's not useful. I wanted to show a picture of the font in action, and I'm sure that looks like an example. Except, okay, well, the font is really nice. In fact, let me show it to you because it really is was very inspirational for me to see this font. There was an article about it in the Scoring Notes blog. That's how I found out about it. So that's where I'll go to show you this. So his font does all sorts of incredibly complicated things, not just stacking of these things, but all these other things that you can see happening. There's like a tick mark on this 4, and it knows that these 3 can line up on the same line, but then that one has to go below. It does all sorts of really complicated positioning, like moving this flat sign over to get out of the way of this natural sign. All sorts of things that this font does. Here you type 2 / to get this, type 2 / to get that. And figured bass is much more complicated than Roman numeral analysis as far as the symbols used and so forth. So his font is incredibly sophisticated. I'm using a much simpler approach. I started trying to see if I could take his font and adapt it, and it kind of worked, but some of the things that didn't work as well was this, when I wanted to put the slash here, it would try to put the slash underneath the 7 because it's going to try to put all the numbers in a stack if it can, and I could fix that eventually, but the amount of work that was required to solve all those problems was looking to be a little more complicated than I felt like dealing with. So yeah, I ended up picking a different approach. So in my font, what I did is I took the free serif font, which is the font that is the default text font in MuseScore. It's an open source font, and I just copied and pasted all of the basic characters, all of the punctuation characters, all the letters of the alphabet, capital and lowercase, and then I copied and pasted the numbers from that font, but I copied them from the boldface version, and then I shrank them so they look to be about the same weight. If you go back to where my score is, I got too many windows open. You can see the 6/4 are not really thin. Now, some people might prefer them a little thinner, maybe a little smaller. I like to really see them. To me, that's what differentiates this from just using superscripts, or for that matter, using that Sicilian Numerals font. The Sicilian, here, let me show you the Sicilian Numerals font, because it is kind of cool. I'm going to type V. Oh, I need to switch to his Sicilian font. That was a guy named Ronaldo Catalbiano, I think, Sicilian Numerals. So I type, let me make this guy bigger. So I type 5, 6, sorry, 20. All right, fine. I made it bigger. Now I go in here and I type 5, 6, 4, and I just get little 6, 4 like that. But if I type Shift 6, that superscripts it, and then 4. So that, that also works. So if you compare his font to my font, well, if I make it 565, then you can compare more directly to this guy. Let's make them the same size. So the Sicilian Numerals font uses somewhat thinner numbers, and that they're not bad. That's fine. I chose to go with a heavier weight ones, and that's something that also could be revisited a little bit. So anyhow, I copied over the bold version of the numbers and then shrank them down so they ended up being about the same weight as the regular letters. I shrank them down and then raised them up. So just typing a 1 gives you a superscripted 1. But then to get things like the 6-4, you create what are called ligatures. So I created a new character that's just a 6 and a 4 combined, and this program, FontForge, is the program I'm using to create these. It's an open source program. It can do that semi-automatically. You just have to tell it, hey, I want a new character that's got a 6 and a 4 in it, and I want to get it by typing 6-4. And it does all that for you. The only thing is it'll put the 6 and 4 next to each other, and so then you go in here and you just drag like it started with this 4. I'm stretching it. That's not what I meant to do. I'm not really good with this program. But in any case, you get this designer where you can design the characters, and then it started with the 4 over there, and I just dragged it down there so it'd be vertical instead. So really that's all I've done here. Well, it's more than just that. There's quite a bit to it, really. But the 6-4 and all these characters, all these combined ones, this is actually the 6-4-3 here, I think. Yeah, that's the 6-4-3. And so if you type 6-4-3, you'll actually get a 6-4-3, which I should show you. If I type 5-6-4-3, then I get 5-6-4-3. Yeah, so I created those ligatures, and I did a few other things like these flat signs. All these characters were in there already, but to make it so that typing B would turn into a flat sign, you do something else, what's called creating contextual substitutions, where I create a set of rules that say if you type BI or BV, turn that B into a flat sign. It's just a special little rule that happens over here. And I kind of learned this as I was going. I was inspired by Figurato, the figured bass font, to do some of these things and look to see how he did some of what he did. And then as I was working on customizing it, I was realizing there was a lot of stuff that I didn't need and that was actually getting in my way, and I was better off just starting over. But the information on those contextual substitutions, for instance, is over here. So I created those. Those are under, so for B, that's under roots. So if I look at my roots rules, here's the rule for BI, and then it tells it to do a substitution there of substituting the B, the flat sign for the B. So there's all these tables that you create over here. Those tables are over here. That's the table that says turn a B into a flat sign, but then only do it if they type BI. So what's the name of the character manipulation program? This is called FontForge. You would think that maybe it would say that in the title bar. How many programs don't put their own name in the title bar? I don't know very many that don't, but it's called FontForge. So let me go to the chat window and type in for you the name of it. FontForge. So that's what I did. So yeah, that's the basics of what I've been doing as far as that's how Roman numerals work. There's a lot more to the whole analysis of understanding. Well, why, I mentioned this D7 here, it's not diatonic, it's not in the key, and the reason it's there is because it's functioning as the 5 chord in the key of G minor. So it's the 5 chord in the key of the 2 chord. This notation 5/7/2, we pronounce it 5/7 of 2. That's the classical notation for that. There's a whole set of theory around how we explain how we explain how chords work, and then we can talk about what chords substitute for what other chords, what chords like to resolve in what way, and there's a whole theory around that. And I keep mentioning that I'm going to be developing a theory course to teach this stuff, and that's still my plan. I've already started the planning for it, so I hope to launch the course, this summer, and I will be making extensive use of Roman numeral analysis in that, and I will be using this font as part of it. So that's what I came here to tell you about Roman numeral analysis. If anyone's got any other questions, I'm happy to answer them. So as for whether the font will be included in MuseScore, I don't know. I'm not ready to include it until I feel it's a little more fully baked. It works pretty well. Are these numbers a little too heavy? I don't know. I'm so used to seeing the super thin ones that you get if you just use superscripting. Like if I just use times font and or free serif for that matter, and I just type some text, and I type 5, 7, and then I tell it down here at the bottom of the screen, superscript that 7. I get this really wimpy, thin 7 that, this font is actually not as bad as some. Some of them get wimpier. So I will definitely think a little bit. The bass note of the chord, how can I make them aligned? So not sure what you mean by aligned here. Let me come back to my example. That's actually not the example I was using. So the bass notes for Roman numerals, if you use this font, this is what they will look like. This bass notes are indicated with inversions like this. So 1, 6, 4, 5, 6, 4, 3. Now, as a jazz musician, that is not, although I recognize that's how Roman numeral analysis does inversions, chord symbol wise, we do things a little differently. We'll say C/E like this. And maybe this is what you're referring to, chord symbols and how they align in MuseScore. That's a totally different topic. But if I use my font and say 5, 6, that's how you would actually notate that in Roman numerals. Except to a jazz musician, 6 is a little misleading because we use 6 to just indicate a 6th chord, a chord with an added 6th. So I actually don't use that Roman numeral analysis in my own work. I mean, I recognize it's the officially right thing to do. I kind of came up with my own notation system that looks like this. I'll say 5 with the 3rd in the bass, and these aligned. So again, I'm guessing that you're asking about this C to E. So the default chord symbol in MuseScore does things like that because at least one publisher did them that way. There is a customization, there's a file you can customize that controls this sort of thing. But if you are, well, let me show you how to do that. A little bit of it anyhow. If I go to Format, Style, and then Chord Symbols, chord symbols, you'll see there's a few different styles. So the jazz style switches to a slightly different, it switches to a kind of handwritten font, and it has a slightly different alignment here. If you really want them all vertically, like horizontally aligned, I should say, vertically aligned, whatever, aligned on the same horizontal plane, then you can choose a custom style, and then you can go find this file on your system and edit it, and you'll see it's got some comments in it about how to do things, and you can edit that file to remove the vertical adjustment that happens here. It's not something that's meant like for the casual user to do just for fun. It's meant because like you really have some strong requirements where your publisher is demanding they be perfectly aligned, so you do it that way. But if since this is the more common arrangement in published music, that's how we do things by default. Eventually we'll probably come up with a dialog box or some interface to make it easier to customize things. But for now, you need to go to this file and create your own customized version of it. So this styles folder here, you'll notice it's empty because this is for your own customized versions. You'll have to find this version within the MuseScore installation folder, copy it to your styles folder, and then customize it. Not a task for the casual user, but if it's really important to you, by all means, you can go for it. So again, that's the font Campagna, and what I think I will do is I'm going to keep playing with just a couple more things about it, and when I feel like it's at the place where I want it to be a little later today, because it's pretty well there, really. I just want to check a couple of things. I'm going to post a link to it. I'll add a link to the video. I'll put it in the comments in the video, a link to where you can download this font from. It's still very much a work in progress. I mean, I don't have any, like, I'm not going to be actively working on it now for the next week or two because I got other things to be doing. I wanted to get it to a state where I could put it out there and then let people play with it. So by all means, start playing with it, give me feedback on it, and then I'll take your feedback and probably post an update to it in a few weeks. And then at that point, I'll probably do a more wide announcement about this. So by all means, you can tell people about this, but don't, I'm not ready to just go blast out to the whole world. Hey, this font's out there ready to be used. It's more, I want to get some feedback on it and do make some improvements before I really start promoting it. So, the font, again, works here in MuseScore, obviously. Did I show it? Yeah, I showed it working in LibreOffice. I assume it works in Finale and Sibelius because it's just a font. I mean, any program that knows how to handle font features like ligatures, which is, again, the term for these stacked things here. If it can handle ligatures and contextual substitutions, that's pretty much all I do. That's fancy. That Figurato font used a whole lot of much fancier positioning things that there's programs that don't support. But this is using a much simpler set, but again, WordPad doesn't support it, so there's probably other programs that it won't work with. So I'll post the link in a little bit, and that's what I got for you. And when I have a more to show as far as like a course to teach about how Roman numerals work, I'll be sharing more information about that as well. And I'm really hoping that this font, because there really isn't anything like this in that's widely available right now. That Sicilian Numerals font that I mentioned is no longer, like the author, his website's gone. If you can find a copy, you can find a copy. But he had a place where you were supposed to, it was a shareware thing. You're supposed to send him money, and that's like that address is no longer good or anything. So I don't feel comfortable just sharing his font without his permission. But so anyhow, I've got my own version of a font that does similar sorts of things, and hopefully, this I hope will become something in widespread use because there's really nothing out there very much like it, and most programs don't have built-in support for Roman numeral analysis the way they do for chord symbols or the way MuseScore does for figured bass. So that's my spiel on Roman numeral analysis. Hope you found it interesting and useful. And if you got other comments or questions, feel free to leave them here on the video. And also ideas for what you'd like to hear me talk about in future Café sessions, just let me know, and we'll talk about whatever people are interested in hearing me talk about. So that said, I will take my leave and see you all next week. Bye.